It's January the 28th, and we're in Goa at the home of my new dear friend, Akash Dharmaraj. Did I get it right?
You got it.
That's really wonderful. And we just planned to have a gentle conversation about the meaning of everything, which may include our histories, our hopes, our fears, our insights, something like that. I'm going to demand you started off, Akash, by that moment when you saw the poster for the movements classes.
Okay, that's a good place to start.
I hope so.
I was on a holiday weekend in Pune at the Osho commune, and I found nothing there to attract me when I came in first. And then I saw this huge poster which said, Gurdjieff Sacred Dances, 6-week seminar. And I had been searching for these dances for a while.
Oh, you had?
I knew about them.
Okay.
I had read about them. I had read Ouspensky. And I was interested, but there was nowhere on earth that I knew where I could go to actually experience them. I didn't have information, I didn't have money, and nor did I have the space and time. So this was the first opportunity. This was the first time. That's it. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to spend all my savings on this year. So I entered that particular space. It was difficult because there were lots of obstacles to actually enrolling for the course. Since I had no previous experience, I was not an Osho sannyasin. I didn't have a lot of the prerequisites. Yet what I had was a wish. And so I jumped in. And Tony, 2 days later, I bitterly regretted this decision, this impulsive entering into something because I have a wish. So it's dangerous. Have a wish and jump into it.
So what didn't you like about it?
My body couldn't take it. I didn't know it was going to be this level of intensity. Dancing for sometimes more than 6 hours a day, without any previous understanding of what the movements entailed. And apart from my body, my understanding of myself, my personality began to crack in all the wrong places. So I was lost. All my confidence, all my images of who I was, what I could do with my life, began to break down. And so it was a most terrifying 6 weeks of my life.
Gosh.
Truly the most terrifying.
It is amazing because I want to see if we can set side by side our two lives as we're just two very different people in different places, and who have both found attraction into this what should we call it, still call it the fourth way for the moment, something like that. And so what year was it when you went to this course?
This was the year 1998.
1998. So, if I may just give a background about myself in that respect, of course, I have to go back to 1960, That's before you were born.
Oh no.
No, all right, that was before you were born, like that. I was starting university. I was just going to go to Cambridge then, 1960. I'd been in university, and at school I'd become an existentialist. I was full of angst, you see. And I kept on wanting to have a nervous breakdown. I saw my friends having nervous breakdowns. It meant they could relax and just have a nervous breakdown. I couldn't have a nervous breakdown. I got very upset at this. I said, please just take it away, let me have a breakdown. But no, they wouldn't let me, you see. And they had another problem. It was my fundamental question at the time, why are there other people? And I meant by a burning question, I used to roll on the floor, upset with this question. This kind of thing. So that was my state, internationally. And I learned about Gurdjieff and Spencer from a book, from Colin Wilson's book. He was a member of the Metaphysical Young Men of Britain and had this attraction. And so I went to the library. It's so prosaic, I went to the library and found the book and found Mr. Bennett. And I came across Volume 1 of his Dramatic Universe and started reading that. Then I realized he may be a person who actually exists somewhere. And I might go and see him instead of just reading the books. I did this and met him. And I've told various of you these stories of how it was to meet him at that time. But lo and behold, at that time, I'd gone down to know about Gurdjieff and movements. No Gurdjieff, no movements. And even at that time when he was living, they would talk of banning the book, All and Everything, from the premises. It was taken over by this other movement. Mm-hmm. So when I first came across, there was nothing there, you see. We did this other exercise until the point came when it all started again. And so I remember now coming back to the movements class, and I was in awe of this. And we met in this wonderful building Bennett had constructed called the Jami Shumatra, a 9-sided building he built in memory of Gurdjieff. It had the most beautiful acoustics for music. And he and a young woman there who had all the movements in her memory, hadn't done them for 4 years, tried to remember all these things. So I was there at the rebirth of the movements. So it was like you, it's with somebody who was taking on the movements for the first time. I was there at the rebirth of the movements with Mr. Bennett, and I saw this was something I needed. So, but unlike you, it was for me I was healing immediately. Part of what I did to help the movements was to intense physical labor as much as I could, sawing down trees, carrying trunks and so on. And with pride I remember Mr. Bennett saying, have you noticed the change internally? It took me 6 months. But then after your trauma, you still persisted with something.
Yes, I think it was the effects, what I began to experience after I got back home, after saying, never again. I wanted to, I wished, I've done it, and now that's it, I've done it, now I get back to my safe life again. And about 3 or 4 weeks later, it's like a recovery from surgery, when all the wounds begin to heal and the body begins to recover its equilibrium. That's when I began to experience a different kind of centering, a different kind of inner experience which had not been part of my life earlier. So I thought perhaps it is the effect of these movements or this work, because by that time I had begun to read, to understand. So I ventured into it once again. There was another 10-day group, and I decided, okay, I will go again, and if this time I have the same experience, perhaps it's not for me, but let me look at it once more. And I went back, and this time it was not painful in the sense of my body had become used to it. I began to understand a little bit of the vocabulary. I could move with music. I began to hear music. So little things which had been very difficult for me began to open up. And so with this experience, then I came back into my life. I, by profession, is a psychotherapist. Yes. That's what I did and do still. I began to think of offering this work, the movements, to people who were part of my groups. Or were working on their own personal issues, and see what happens. I had enough holding in me to know that I wouldn't allow it to harm them, should there be any such possibility. And invited whoever was willing and interested to start. So that's how I began to enter the movements for myself, along with people who I knew well, not offering it to people whom I didn't know, but to people who I was working with, so at a very deep and intimate level, so that I could see for myself, discover for myself what are the effects of this when offered to people who are in this kind of an experience, in emotional state, including myself. So I had found that after the breakdown, for me that was a nervous breakdown. It was equivalent.
You had your nervous breakdown.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so envious.
I remember my college professor, while studying clinical psychology, had recommended. She said to me, have your nervous breakdown early in life. You'll regret it later. Don't wait till you're 60. I did not listen to her. I wish I had. But anyway, I had that breakdown in the middle of the movements. And after that, it was healing. It was healing. So
to enjoy doing sort of it was like a natural part of the therapy you were doing anyway.
Yes.
Very, nothing strange in a way.
Nothing strange, not at all. And the feedback I got from people who worked with me was, they were angry with me. They hated the work. They didn't like corns being stepped on. They didn't like some of the confrontations that come with the work. They didn't like seeing themselves, and yet they loved it. So
yes, yes and no together.
Yes, and I really liked the work.
So in your experience, you picked up something about the movements and almost straight away got into sharing them with other people yourself.
Yes.
Which feels very, or it seems hearing the most natural way of doing things, instead of, you didn't immediately go off and find some other movements teacher.
I did, later.
But later, but initially you had this experience of sharing with other people, which seemed to be one of the most marvellous things about what your own life history in this.
Well, I didn't know, Tony, that I was entering a forbidden universe.
It's the plastic innocence.
I thought this is something available, wonderful work, beautiful, and let me go ahead and share it with people whom it will benefit. Because I do look at things in terms of real benefit.
Yes. So it's quite a natural response. Again, you find something which gives you joy and you want to share it with your friends.
That's all.
That's all. So you were really blessed in that respect. You didn't have lines of authority and what should be taught and what this is and who can do what. You had none of that in the beginning.
No, I dispensed with shoulds very long ago.
That's right. That's right. And then you said later on you got into contact with other people who knew something about them.
Yes, I met Deborah.
Oh, Deborah was the first person. How did you come across her?
I heard about her and I wrote to her.
Straightforward.
Directly saying, this is who I am, I live in India, and will you be willing to come? And she said, yes, I'd be willing to come. Are you a man or a woman? Who are you? So I wrote back. And she came along with Melanie Mansoor, who was a pianist.
Piano.
And so both of them came to Delhi, where I lived at that time. And they led us through a beautiful group of movements. And they were different from what I had learned earlier with my teacher, who was teaching earlier at the commune and later outside of that.
At the commune, you mean the Osho commune?
At the Osho commune, and that was Amio.
Okay.
And Deborah was Amio's teacher, the first teacher.
Yes.
In fact, I think it was Deborah, James and Avram who had offered movements outside of the restricted area or the closed.
Yes, they were the pioneers.
The pioneers,
in that.
So that was very exciting to meet her and learn from her. but no other teachers. And the next person I contacted was Wim.
As Wim van Dulleman.
That's right. I wanted to invite him, but he was writing a book and very, very immersed in that.
Yes, it was fairly recent then. Now you're coming.
It was 2 years ago. 3 years ago.
Gosh, we're almost arriving at today already.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you.
Moi.
You.
So
I'm self-taught, I would say. Most of the journey has been my own.
Always been in touch with, or frequent touch with other people, with other sources, and learning from them. That is, it comes to my mind, I can't do it in the original Latin and really show off, but it goes, he who teaches learns. And it seems to naturally learn, so you have to teach it. Even in the work they used to say about Gurdjieff's ideas, they had to have the chance to try and explain it to other people, because only eventually, when explaining it to other people, do they get it.
Yes.
In the sense, you have to give it in order to receive it. If you keep it to yourself, it doesn't flow.
And that is what we did in the group. We were all reading together, we were discovering together. And as I said to you, I was a quarter of a step ahead. And yes, I drew a lot on my understanding of things as a psychotherapist. So I had a view of human beings, of emotional trauma, of healing.
Yes.
And I used all that and brought all that into this space. Into a space where all this is missing in the fourth way work. The work with emotions and groups and relationships is missing.
It is true.
So,
I was wondering, because you're an Indian, whether you had something from your own tradition specifically, which has come into your explorations. I mean, you mentioned the psychotherapy contribution. Is there something from any Indian tradition specifically?
no, the other part of it was the Sufi tradition.
Oh, Sufi. Okay.
Yes.
Where did you come across that?
That's a lovely story.
All right, we'd love to hear your stories.
Okay. I was living in Kashmir. I was 19 years old and had just got married, and my husband at that time was an army officer who was posted in the field area. So wives and children don't accompany men to the field area. So I was living by myself in a house in Srinagar, which is the capital of Kashmir. And there was next door to my house an orchard, and the gardener there used to help me to grow strawberries and look after. I had a pet goat to help me to look after my goat and so on. So one day this gardener very kindly invited me to his home for tea, and I was happy to go and went with lots of gifts for the children and so on. And when I reached there, I discovered that this was no ordinary gardener. What was happening out there was not what happens in gardeners' homes. And there were people sitting about waiting quietly for him to appear, and there was music, there was a hushed something happening. And suddenly he walks in, and I asked for Mali ji, because Mali means gardener. So I asked, where is the gardener? And I was told, he's no gardener, he's a Sufi master. What are you saying? Oh, okay. Sufi master? So what does that mean? I didn't know. I had never heard the word Sufi.
Not heard the word Sufi at all?
Not as a Sufi master. No, I hadn't actually. I was...
How lovely.
So I asked him. I said, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were some great person. I thought you were my gardener, and I'd come to meet you, like that. So he explained to me that yes, he was a Sufi, and there were certain practices and there were certain ways of healing. He's a Hakim. A Hakim is a healer. So in the Sufi way. So he explained to me, and he said to me, looked me straight in the eye and says, Banja Sufi. Banja Sufi is become Sufi. It'll do you good. I said, no, it will not do me good at all. It's a Muslim thing. it is about Islam. I'm a Hindu. My parents would kill me if they discovered that I was doing Muslim things.
Oh gosh, yes.
Islamic. And this was, in fact, my parents were in what is now Pakistan. My mother was from there, and they had left, leaving their lands and leaving everything behind in Pakistan because
of the partition. And
there was a lot of anger still at that time about all that in them, and it was personal. So no Islam. So he explained to me that Sufi had very little to do with Islam or fundamentalist Islam in that sense, but it was really a work. It's about love, and it's about a very different thing, and about healing. So I didn't believe him, but something attracted me to that. And if you remember, I spoke a few days ago about him telling me that a Sufi zikr would help me to produce the enzymes that were required to absorb the realities of life. So Sufi was there.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I came from an atheist. I was one of the first atheists that I knew.
Just like me.
Just like me.
With this chap, you just saw him, just at one meeting or a few meetings. Did you carry on meeting with him occasionally?
With the Sufi?
With the
Oh,
Sufi?
yes.
So he did have a major influence on you.
Yes, I worked along with him for almost 2 years, learning very simple Sufi practices. And especially they were all movement oriented, and special practices which I saw them mimicked in the movements later.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
fantastic.
So I worked, and then the Kashmir problem started in India, and everything shut down. And the Sufis, they ran off to the mountains, and I only had a carpet seller in Delhi who was my only contact with my
That's
teacher.
beautiful putting it, the carpet seller in Delhi. Your contact with Sufism. How wonderful.
So that's the background with which I came.
That's a very special age. You say you're 19.
I was 19.
There are strong impressions at a turning point in your life, and you got married and so on. And that was for 6 years or something, a few years like that. So very important what you received at that time. And probably he did, as he said, give you the enzymes.
He did.
He gave his word about these particular enzymes.
Yes.
Because there's something where people get this idea about teachings, so if somebody goes blah, 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 and explains something to you, but it's as if it was an idea. But as you're implying very rightly, I think the real essence of it all is something chemical, something nutritious, which enables you to live life and live it well. It's you're not believing as if you're going away from yourself. You're taking something which is truly organic, it's into your body, your environment, the food you eat. You've got to have that organic aspect of it. And this, I think, highlights the sort of difficulties, say, a lot of Westerners have. They are in this kind of setting which they themselves feel has no little history in it for them, personally, a sense of tradition or inner teaching. And they have to get something else. So everything appears to be exotic and from another place and artificial. It's not there in there. So you're like having a gardener in the garden with the food and the air and everything. And so you're absorbing it with all of those impressions. So it's impression food you're getting, the most substantial sort of food.
Yes, that I understood 50 years later.
Oh! Yes. Sometimes the books are just to give a label to what you know already. You say, oh, that's what it is. Now I can say what it is. I've got it. Now it's nice to have the label for it, isn't it? That sort of thing. And it's so interesting that with this extraordinary man, you have this intimation of the movements. This is almost the essence of the movements you have there. So as if you have the essential thing very early on. And then, of course, you have to do all the extra bits and learn and so on, but it's almost ancillary to what you already have inside you. That's a lovely thought.
Yes.
And this, I mean, for you also, I feel it's so important to recognize there was involved for you this extraordinary step because of your background as a Hindu and the politics of the situation, to move into the other space. So there was a real genuine, I call it a cost. I mean, there was a substance to this step. It's not something, you're not like somebody saying, oh, I'm looking for a spiritual master, what have you got on offer? And I go and pick one. You know, this, for you it was a step in your being, you know.
Yes, and only it was a secret. I could not tell you.
Secret, this is
I was an accidental Sufi, first of all. I just fell into it, and it was a secret. I revealed it, even my children didn't know, nobody knew. I revealed it, my work, only a few years ago.
So you used to just go up and say, I'm going to see the gardener. And then
That's
you would
all.
hit, oh, I wonder why she said I was going to see the gardener. But
And why is this particular carpet seller being entertained with tea and so and so?
Yes.
And why does why can't we buy a shawl from somebody else? Why does it have to be Habib? Because Habib happens to be my link.
But you can't tell anybody it's your contact, you know this.
So, and even when I told my children later, I said, you remember Habib, the shawl wala? Oh, that's what you were up to with him, is it? Yes, that's what I was up to. So.
Well, mine is, you know, Gurdjieff was very keen on this, keeping a secret that can give you power. Because the person who is immature blabs immediately, puts it outside. If you can hold a secret, you have integrity.
So I call it my pill. The sly man's pill.
What a perfect example. And brought you in life, and you did, I take my pill from God, something like that. Yeah. Now I'm thinking of this other, well, there be many extraordinary things in your life, but the moment when you told me, I don't know how it happened, I can't remember this. Oh, that's what it was. You told me that you were giving a performance of the movements once, and there was a strange gentleman in the audience.
Yes.
And you asked them to take part in number 39.
That's true.
But he didn't, and you asked him personally.
Yes. I invited him to just pick up his arm and put it in. Yes.
And this was at a public kind of open demonstration of the movements?
It was a demonstration after 10 days of work in the Osho commune.
In where?
In Osho commune in Pune.
Oh, still in Osho commune.
Yes.
Okay. And then, unfold your story later, you had a phone call, or was it a message?
Yes, his secretary came to me and said they would like to ask me to come to their place, their ashram.
And at that point, did they already say why?
To teach the movements.
To teach the movements, so out of the blue.
Out of the blue.
And then you went and you said they greeted you and told you you would meet with their guru.
Yes.
And it was?
Yes, and this man who had asked to join me in the movements, smiling at me and saying, "You recognize me? You remember me?" And I'm looking at him saying, "You're the guru?" He said, "Yes, I'm the guru." And for me it was very strange because my image of a Jain guru was something else. Was something else. Absolutely. And I was quite scared of entering a Jain ashram because I have all kinds of strange notions about Jains and what they do and how they are so different.
This appalls me that you had that major strangeness of encountering sort of Muslims when you were young. Now you have the Jains turned up another big step.
Yes. And yes, so we actually went there and taught and took them through the movements, and we had a performance, and we went back again me and some of the people who
Well, this part of the colour, this performance you told me, of course, the performance by them.
Yes, by
And
them.
then you said it was 1,000 in the audience?
1,000 in the audience.
1,000 in the audience for movements done by Jain monks. It's
Yes.
unbelievable. When I heard about this, I fell off my chair. It is very unusual. And they're still sort of in touch with you.
Yes.
So does this give you, say to you something about the nature of the movements, that it's something in it which is, well, I call it ecumenical, the term. It's a kind of new, it doesn't have that sense of being particularly in this or that line. And if you took it in terms of Christianity, Sufism, Buddhism, and Taoism, you look at it, he has done some kind of coalescence, some kind of mergence, which has made it, given it a touch of universality. This is what I'm groping to express now. The Jains could take it up, and Sufi could take it, anybody could take it up without it feeling that it was something different from them. I wonder if you do feel that there's something. I'm searching always for what is that particular quality in the movements. For after all, they're the creation of one man in relatively few years. There were 3 periods when he composed these, and he was composing right up to the time of his death. As you know, this one was the last one he did, number 39. And there was this beautiful, I felt a beautiful way of talking about, well, we did plan for there to be 40, but the 40 was his death. And I thought, wow, what a concept, it was so amazing. And they've tied it in because I have a copy of his death mask, at home. You've seen it in my home. I look at his serene face and I say, that's number 40. Kind of thing. But it's a hard thing I know to speak about, but this, it's creation of one man, and he's saying, in a way, he's an independent tradition, the fourth way, not all the traditional ways, the fourth way, a set number of movements. And it stands on its own. It's just, I think, something unique. It's not like Tai Chi, it's not like martial arts, it's not like temple dancing. It's, what is this? I'm just trying to nudge you and give you, perhaps it's irrelevant to try and give words to it.
I'm at a loss. I have no words to describe it. I can only describe my experience of it, which I have already done. And it's a mystery. For me, it's something to be experienced, entered into, and that's it.
Good. You did say that you had come across the books before you went to the Osho event, so something happened in between the Sufi and the carpet seller, and seeing that notice in the Osho, you picked up these books. I think you mentioned you went into a bookshop and saw them.
I love books. I go book shopping often. Yes. And there was it on the shelf, and I thought, what a strange name for a book. Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson.
Exactly.
What is this? And so, okay, it's a fat book. I like fat books. It was just that. And I picked it up. It didn't make sense to me, but it stayed there on my bookshelf. And then I found Ouspensky, it was easier to read. I liked the title again. In Search of the Miraculous, Fragments of an Unknown Teaching. It was beautiful. Attractive. So, okay, pick it up. And so I had read Ouspensky, and although he doesn't say much about the movement.
No, very little indeed.
I don't know where I heard about I think somebody who was doing the Alexander technique. A teacher who had come, yes, now it comes back to me, and I went for that because at that time I was looking for various approaches which complemented my work as a psychotherapist, and body work does. is important. So, Alexander, yes.
So this man connected with the Alexander technique told you about Gurdjieff, spoke to you personally, said.
Spoke to me about the movements.
I know the movements. Did he say where he learnt about it himself?
No, I don't remember.
No, he just mentioned it. Okay.
But he said there were these movements, and they were something that went beyond the Alexander technique, something that went beyond the Requiem character armor, body armor that we were working with.
Yeah.
So I was, okay, so where can I learn these? Oh, I don't know, it's a very secret society. So that was the end of it. Until I saw this notice at the Osho conference.
And the last bit in that story was, why were you at the Osho communion?
I was on holiday in Bombay with some friends, and they were going to Pune for the weekend, and I had nowhere to go, so I went with them.
It seems almost inconsequential, doesn't it? Almost by accidental.
Don't know why these things happened. In fact, I had met and rejected Osho 20 years earlier.
It's wonderful. Well, you know, Mr. Bennett, who I learned was so interested in this, he was so clear, because people don't come to it in a straightforward, rational way at all. It's with these peculiar coincidences which play a part in their lives. And I think I told you the other day, when he had his school in Sherborne, each year 100 people, he was intrigued by this, and he got 1 year to write their account of how they came to be at his school, and they were absolutely fascinating. I told you the story of a young lady, an American lady. She came over to Europe with money in her pocket, didn't know what to do, sat next to an old lady on the plane who began to tell her about Sherborne, so decided to go to Sherborne. She'd not heard of Gurdjieff, Bennett, or anything of these things before. But you know, I'd like to go back to Beelzebub. Yes. That was, for me, quite seminal, but in a way a different sense to you, because I was at university in a town called Bristol, and it had this lovely bookshop right next to the university called George's. I used to wander into it, and there was this Beelzebub's Tales, and at that time I couldn't afford to buy it. So occasionally go over in my lunchtime and read it in the bookshop. And gosh, I really remember opening these pages, reading about his description, and it was like, and for me it was obvious, it was totally crystal clear, as if he was directly observing his own brain. I thought, I've never read anything like it in my life. It wasn't a theory, it wasn't a model, it wasn't an image. He was like reading off actual operations in his own brain or mind.
And it didn't drive you crazy?
No, I thought, this is, at last, this is somebody who's truly empirical, is not just waffling about things, what might be, or an explanation. This is how it really is. And that's something I've been searching for. I knew about him in his work, but it brought home that quality which I'd instinctively felt about him, his concreteness. He boasted about it, you know, I am more material than the materialists. And I think he did that with good reason. So for me it was that direct thing. I can always see myself where I was and my posture in the bookshop, reading this, saying, going, yes. It was then that Christmas, a friend of mine bought me it for as a Christmas present. So, and perhaps there's something in it about how, you know, it's like you say, you felt you couldn't make any sense of it, and I felt the opposite. Well, there was one similar thing to that for me when I was at university. I began to get in Ouspensky, and I came across this book, The Fourth Way. And I remember getting so far in, and I put it away, so I can't. It's so against it's so against science, it's so unscientific, I can't bear with it, and I say I'll wait a little bit. But I concentrated on Research and Miraculous when I was studying for my final exams. I would promise I would do 1 hour of study and allow myself to read one chapter of In Search of the Miraculous. Otherwise, I would not have done any study. I was so enraptured with the book. People sometimes talk about books as just theory, but they are also themselves beings. I think they make, in my experience, and I even once had a dream about All and Everything, which remained with me. I was in this dream, I was quite young, and I was opening the pages of Beelzebub, and I was looking at it, and I was thinking, God, there really is objective science. And as you know, in a dream you can't actually read any text. But it gave me the conviction there was objective science by reading this book in a dream. It was a gift to me, and I saw this thing in the voice saying, this is the source of Plato, and there was this light somewhere. And ever since I've been wanting to have nice dreams like that.
Do you?
No, not as good as that. There's a little angel went, duck, give you something. No, little stuff like that. There's the people meet a person, you pick up a book, you go to an event, and if you're looking at it from above, it would be like almost a random particle, but it's not like that. It's not random. I mean, what is drawing us to this? This is what I'm feeling now. I mean this about drawing, calling. Later you get the voice of this calling. Sense of the calling. It's not, you can explain it and say, oh, one is searching and all this sort of thing, but no, I really feel is something comes to us. Mm-hmm. Like this gardener turns up. You see, it's not your doing, and you say, no, that's the whole thing. No, anything but that. I mean by calling is and you may not, it's like a calling where you don't know what the words are. It's like touch just precisely enough for the next step. Never extra, just enough.
The question here, at least my question here is, what about those who do come for the work? What about those who have a yes and are searching? Okay, let's say billions are not searching, but there are 30 who are searching.
Yes.
Where do they go? What's the future here?
Well, for me, certainly an essential part of an answer, like you may speak of answers, and it's been for me the most important thread in my last 50 years of my life, is the possibility of such people looking at each other and saying, here we are. Nobody's going to do it for us, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And we have together to come to decide what to do and how to do it, which may appear impossible, but we've gone through so much to decondition ourselves from the general society which has been governed for millennia by authorities and priests and kings, all of who lay down laws and declare what is important, what is not important, who is important, who is not important. And for me, the history of man has been to dissolve that structures, the structures which have built cities into all kinds of outcomes. There's the people can look around and look at each other. I come and meet you. We're just limited people. but there's a chance we can listen to each other, and we're not turning to Mr. X to make up our minds for us. There's just us, between us, to do it. So if I was forced, which you are asking me, if people come and what can they do, then I say they're reaching the point of turning to each other and admitting.
Each one knows nothing.
Each one knows nothing, but between them they can create something.
What?
What they create.
How?
And how they create it.
So
because they can make a beginning.
Get together and get some books and read them, and they want to learn the movements. Where do they go? Who?
Those are all kind of practical questions.
This is a practical question.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they're all right if you want to go precisely, but I really feel this thing about you. You don't, like the practices and such. I mean, the work is in movements, the work is in the books, the work is in meditations, or any of these things. It's this current, and I used to feel sometimes that first time when I told you Mr. Bennett told me to take over his lectures to a group in London, and I had to come up with something to tell them and invent. And so now I remember once I was talking, I really got the sense of what we're involved in goes back at least 40,000 years. And it's whenever this kind of contact had been made between people. So your society is called Achaldam, and after which is the brotherhood, you see, they come together to share in finding out. You see, so that I think the where to go is not only it's how to be in this sharing together as equals, because that's extremely rare in the world. Where people do not come because there's an authority who says, here is a group, you may join this group. And this is what it believes in, and this is its rules. I believe we're not doing that. This is what I believe. And so it appears with time that you're offering less and less. Of course you offer movements in a certain way, or information, but the deeper part of it, for me, speaking seriously for me, is that you're offering an opportunity to come together with some kind of unification of intent. And that is the magic. What you're actually doing is that was secondary. Truly.
I agree with the intent and the possibility of magic. I agree with that. But we do need a practical way.
Well, it's true. I had once a teacher, and he would use this phrase, I'll call it like path maintenance. It meant there is a path, and if you get somewhere on it, it's your duty to help build the path, or repair the path, whatever it is, for other people. And Gurdjieff talks about it in this abstract way about the staircase. You have to put somebody on the staircase behind you. But this is an ideal, clearly, to have a trail through the chaos of the collective life. How do you get the message? How do you get from person to person? And I haven't found myself any stable form of this at all. So that you could say, how was the practicality? It means something which you can rely on and know and tell other people. Because right at the beginning, what people can hear about this, how do you reach them? And all you talked about, it's all been like, that was pure chance, except for what's in your heart. That's the one true thing. So could it, you see, Gurdjieff himself set up his institute, this grandiose institute, the harmonious development of man. Mr. Bennett later on copied it, the Institute for the Comparative Study of History, Philosophy and the Sciences, the sense of having a format which we'd known with a curriculum, but it never got realized in any case. With that, because Gurdjieff laid out the curriculum, would have this, would have the medical thing, the astronomical thing, and all that sort of thing. But And people said, well, perhaps he was fantasizing or just provoking or playing a game. But Bennett at one time said he thought that, another time he thought it was serious, and he tried to make it happen himself. That is, to have an established form which would have some kind of public recognition, people who go and learn some techniques and practice. But even with him it didn't happen. So I'm wondering whether what you're asking is elusive.
Well, I don't know. I took it upon myself to work. Not just me working, but a group of people working. So it's somewhat what you're describing, of people coming together to work. And so whatever was my limited knowledge and whatever was their limited knowledge, we exchanged. And over time, each one has acquired each other's limited knowledge. Now what? So then I invite you, because I believe you have a larger sphere of knowledge and something different which can...
something different.
Yeah, which can, again, put a spark and ignite something within us, which will start us moving again. Or not, I don't know.
Well, just to interrupt you there, just to consider Mr. Bennett himself, he got accused by people throughout his life of, in a sense, not being able to make up his mind, that he would engage with new influences. And imagine that when he did this big step of engaging with this Indonesian mystic Subud, which surprised people, then he, the Shivpuri Baba in Nepal, another surprise for people, then Idris Shah, another surprise for people, and so on to Hassan Shushud, another Sufi. And he was like, it seemed every few years something new would appear on the horizon. And I really believed, and I saw him during some of these meetings, that he was demonstrating the path of what he gave the name to of hazard. In hazard, you can't be guaranteed of a result. It just gives you an opportunity of taking a gamble, which might pay off, because there's no sure pathway. So it's been simply following the same example. You look around, find something, and to have the capacity to respond to it wholeheartedly. And without this, you decay, or stagnate. So that's already a practical indication. But again, it has to be something fairly natural which evolves. You can't do it artificially. It's also curious to me that a lot of people in Gurdjieff work sort of went on to take up some more traditional practice, like Vedanta. A lot of people did it, like the Ouspensky school in London became Vedantist. People become Sufis, people become Buddhists, as if the uncertainty of the fourth way just takes them to that place. Even you think of the character, do you remember her in the writings, Miss Merston? Does that a name means anything to you? It is an old English lady in the prairie.
Yes.
And in the writings she gets made fun of.
Yes.
Because she's supposed to be in charge of the children, and everybody makes fun of her until Richard Gurdjieff did partly so they would realize the need for compassion for her. But she ended up with Ramana Maharshi and said he is better than Gurdjieff. So you get the people who leave it and go to this more individual path. But what you're doing is something different. I think you're, how would I describe it? I'm just at this moment trying to give a word to it. It's like you're more like an open door than a terminus.
I think so. I agree with that.
Because you don't invite everybody through your door.
The door is open, nobody comes through it.
That's right, yes. There's the invitation, come.